Hi, this is Joe Chambers. Thanks for watching Musicians Hall of Fame Backstage Vault Series. The Vault Series is a series of interviews that we shot starting back in 2004, 2 years before the Musicians Hall of Fame and Museum opened to the public. If you like what you see, please be sure to hit like, subscribe, and the notification bell so you don't miss any of our new content. Thanks for watching. Today's guest is bass guitarist Billy Cox. Billy and Jimi Hendrix lived here in Nashville over on Jefferson Street about a mile from here. They walk right by this building we're filming at right now many times. They've played all over Middle Tennessee. There's been so many documentaries about Jimi Hendrix made over the years. Not as much talk about what happened here in Nashville. You may learn a whole lot from this interview from Billy. Without Billy, who knows what would have happened with Hendrix. Hope you enjoy it. Billy Cox. Where were you born?
I was born in Wheeling, West Virginia, and moved. My father was a minister, and we left there when I was 12 years old to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, where I did my grade school and high school, and from there went to the military, at which time I met Jimi Hendrix, and that's a long story. But
How old were you when you joined the military?
I was 19 years old when I joined the military, and Jimi was about the same age. Yeah, I was in Fort Campbell. I was in '61, and we went to a movie, one of John Wayne movie, that we criticized all the way through because being military men, we saw the flaws. And however, we enjoyed the movie, and I think it was The Sands of Iwo Jima. And at which time we left the movie, the theater, and it was raining outside, and I wound up on a doorstep of Service Club #1 with some people I didn't even know. And I heard some playing coming from inside the Service Club. The window was up maybe a couple of inches. And I turned to the guy next to me. I said, "That's pretty unique playing, isn't it?" He says, "It don't sound too good." He said, I don't want to repeat what he said, but he was listening with the human ear, and I think I was more listening from another perspective. At which time I went in and introduced myself, and he says, "Well, check out a bass with your service card. You know, let's jam." So I did that, and immediately we became compadres in this music because, hey, he was playing the sounds and the music of that time, and I knew most of those songs by heart. I never, played them that much, but we rehearsed to the point where we said, "Hey, let's form a group," and we formed a group at Fort Campbell. We played at a lot of the functions, and then we later got discharged, and we wound up in Clarksville. And went to Indianapolis, starved to death, came back to Clarksville, and we wound up here in Nashville, Tennessee. And the story goes on and on. I could talk for hours on this thing, but however, he went on, and he called me one day. He says, "Look," he said, he was in New York at that time. He says, "This guy's going to send me to Europe and make me a star." And I told him about you. I said, "Jimmy, I've fallen on hard times. And I've got 3 strings on my bass. The 4th one's tied in a square knot, and I'm renting an amp." He says, "Man, you have really fallen on bad times." So he said, "That's all right. I'm going to Europe. I'm going to make it, and I'll send for you." And he did it. It took him maybe 2.5 years, but he did that, and I thank him for that.
So when you guys were playing in the Nashville area, what years were that in?
That was 60, the latter part, 60, 61, 62, 63, 64, 65, and I think he went out on the road and got with some other entertainers, and then he'd get stranded, and we'd send for him. At that time, $20 could get you on a Greyhound to anywhere in the United States. That was the time period that we were playing.
And what were the names of the groups that you had at the time?
Well, we stayed in that one band. We called it the King Casuals. And we traveled around the chitlin circuit, and these clubs were called the chitlin circuit because they served fish and chitlins, and those are the two meals that they served. And some of them had pot-belly stoves in the middle of them, and there were the Winchester, Manchester, Tullahoma, Murfreesboro.
Y'all played Murfreesboro?
Murfreesboro. There was there was the Elks in Murfreesboro, and a little red club up in the back of the woods or what have you. But we mind you, we weren't that we weren't famous, but we were kind of popular because Jimmy did a lot of his antics on stage, and a lot of them, people didn't know whether to clap or walk out. They said, man, but they knew he was unique in some sort of way. They later found out how unique he really was. Prior to that, we came to Nashville playing at the Club Del Morocco on Jefferson Street. From there, went to the New Era, and then went from there to the Club Baron. And then we played at some clubs downtown, like the Jolly Roger, which you have in the Musicians Hall of Fame, that picture. And in fact, you have the exact replica. Well, it's not the replica. It is the stage that we played on at the Jolly Roger downtown in Printers Alley. After Jimmy moved on to his fame, I remained here.
So Jimmy said that, like when you were here in Nashville, he said this is where he really learned how to play guitar in the L.A. Free Press, 1967. What was a day like with you and Jimmy on, like, say, y'all used to live over on Jefferson Street, right?
We lived on Jefferson Street up above Joyce's House of Glamour. Now, that spot has, I think the city dedicated that spot for historical, but it's over top where the overpass for 40 years that goes across Jefferson Street. Funny story that the lady owned that house, Miss Harris, I think, and she had some kids. Jimmy and his girlfriend lived upstairs, so you turn the stairs and look, there was his bedroom. So I knocked out, we were at the Del Morocco, which is 3 blocks down the street. I said, man, Jimmy's supposed to be, where is he? I don't know. So pretty soon, a half an hour goes by, he's half an hour late. I said, man, I'm gonna run up there and get him. So I go up and knock on the door, Miss Harris said, yeah. I said, is Jimmy? He said, yes, he is, just because he's up there. So I go and knock on him, hey, man. And so Jimmy looks at me, he said, you know, I woke up and dreamed the gig was canceled, so I went back to sleep. I said, oh, I said, you better get your clothes on and get down here. That's funny.
That is funny.
Yeah, he dreamed the gig was canceled, so he went back to sleep. But an average day was I'd wake him up and knock on his door, and sometimes he's laying there with his guitar on his stomach where he had practiced all night till he fell asleep after the gig. And then we'd get up and get a little bite to eat, and we'd hang out, and he's walking down the street playing his guitar. He put 25 years in 5 years. He put 25 years in his guitar because it was a night and day affair. And he knew where he was going and what he wanted to do in life. So he was preparing himself. And I saw that happen. And a lot of times I would profit by what he did. Like, oh, well, this chord here, oh, no, you know. So but he stayed up all night long, just practicing. And we played maybe sometimes to 2:30 in the morning. He'd go to his room. Then, but when him and Joyce, his girlfriend, is from Springfield, when she would come in, he didn't do a lot of practicing. He didn't want to wake her up. But that's a lot of time. Then he walked down the streets playing, and people weren't used to seeing that. Here's a guy they see from time to time who would walk down the street, go to a movie show, picture show, and go inside, and he's plucking with no amp, but he's getting his fingers together. Come out, and he's still playing. So, you know, people have names for people that do things like that, and they don't understand. You know.
That was here in Nashville?
That was here in Nashville.
And what was your day? What did you do? I mean,
I was right behind him most of the time we were together. Because a lot of times they'd see me. No, I didn't walk down the street with my bass. But when they see him, most of the time they see me, or they call me Jimmy, and call him Billy, you know, because we came here together. And then when they came to the clubs, they saw us on stage, you know. So we had a lot in common. We were about the same age, and we came up with the same type of family, and we had awful lot in common. And the thing that was really great about coming to Nashville was the fact that he listened to WLAC with Hoss Allen, John Richburg, Herman Grizzard, Ernie's Record Mart. But he said that sometimes it would come in a wave, and then it would descend, and it'd come right back up and stay on maybe 10 minutes. He said right in the middle of the song he was enjoying, it would descend. Now, I'm up in West Virginia. My father's a preacher. Can't bring that crap in the house. So I built a crystal radio set with earphones, plugged it to my springs. The first time I took that pin and put it on the top of that crystal, I'm down for Royal Crown in Nashville, Tennessee. That was Hoss Allen. So we were listening at the same time to a lot of the songs of that era from our home. So we had an upbringing kind of the same. That's why we gravitated to each other.
What were the songs that you guys played on the chitlin circuit gigs?
Soul Twist by King Curtis. By that time, Booker T and the MGs were a big thing with Steve Cropper and all the fellas and songs of that time. And they were great songs, and we perfected them. A lot of times, when you have most musicians will testify to the fact, even if you might not know the song, if you're playing in the club and you're doing 45 on, 15 off, and you're doing that all week long, the first 2 or 3 nights you're practicing. About the 4th or 5th night, you are. So it was a practice, play, practice, perfect, practice, perfect, practice, play, all the time.
I heard that Jimmy was always buying new gadgets and stuff.
Jimmy couldn't afford new gadgets, so he got what he could if he could find something. But there weren't that many gadgets out. There was a wah-wah pedal, but he never had a wah-wah. I think he used one from somebody, let him use it, but never had one. So I made him a cord because he still danced and moved about on stage. He was very good with dancing. So I built him a cord that was maybe 100 foot long, but I lost 1/1000th of a second. So I came down to 75 feet, same thing. When I got to about 60 feet, it didn't lose that much. But he couldn't, see that first one I built, he could go out the door of the club wasn't that large. But then finally after I got it down to about 50 or 60 feet, it got a little better, but he couldn't. He just did, but he could come off the stage and get on the dance floor and do some things, and people thought that was very unique. At that time, there were artists going to Tennessee State University. Now, mind you, this club was maybe half a mile from Tennessee State, so we had people that came in. Carla Thomas, for instance, at that time, she was a junior or senior, and she'd come in and she'd sang with us, and we couldn't believe this. Here she is. She's had hit records, but she's going to college, and so that was very. Then the guy who owned the club, he had various artists in at the Del Morocco, and then when we got to the new era, this guy here had a very good budget. He had we were opening bands for Little Richard, Wilson Pickett, Mitty Collier. In fact, Mitty fell in love with us. And so we had some dates. She had everything charted out. So we had some dates with her down in Clarksville, Indianapolis, Evansville, some various places with her.
Like when you on Jefferson Street, I'm really intrigued about that time.
Mm-hmm.
That was the roots right there, for you guys, and I'm assuming, what are any of those clubs? I mean, I think there's still the Elk Lodge or something. Is there any clubs that you played at still in existence?
Yeah, the Elks was on 16th and Charlotte, and it moved to where the Club Baron used to be, and Joe Raidberg had. We will also work with Joe. In fact, Joe was kind of like the overseer, him and Mickey Kreitner, for the Jolly Roger. So he came to Jefferson Street. Joe Rainberg came to Jefferson and opened up the Club Baron. Well, the Elks now is in the spot where the Club Baron used to be. Great story. One night we finished our gig, Sam Cooke and Jackie Wilson are in town. So after we finished our gig, we said, "Oh, Jackie Wilson, they're going to be coming down to the club." So anyhow, we go down and listen to the Imperials. It was a band there. And next thing we know, here comes Jackie Wilson and Sam Cooke coming in the door. Pandemonium breaks out. They hit the stage, and so something? A lot of guys, I didn't know. Me and Jimmy, somehow we wound up on stage. Yeah, we know all your songs. Boom, they kicked off songs, and man, I think they did Bring It On Home to Me. Boy, we ate that. So we did about 4 or 5 songs, and it was really great. And Sam Cooke turned around and said, "Man, you guys are really great." I was saying, "Take me with you, take me with you." But he didn't make that statement. But later on, Jimmy wound up playing, doing some stuff with Jackie Wilson when he left Nashville. Because, see, Jimmy was constantly yearning for his fame. And he knew what he wanted, where he wanted to go, but he didn't know how to get there. So one guy would say, well, I got this early, let's come on down there. And he'd come to me. I said, it doesn't sound stable, Jimmy. I think we need to stay away from that. He'd go, and then he wound up stranded. Hey, man, I'm stranded. I said, well, I hate to say I told you so. Boom, I bring it back. Then another guy, well, I'm going up here. Then he'd wound up in St. Louis. So after he finally did that 5 or 6, then when he'd come back, he'd play with the King Cats, this group I was with. He finally went that last time. He was with Jimmy, with Little Richard. Well, what happened? I'm sitting on my front doorstep with some friends, and we look up, and there's this Silver Eagle pulling up. What in the world? And out jumps Jimmy and Little Richard. And Little Richard comes to me and says, you must be Billy Cox. Jimmy, hey, man. I said, yeah. He said, well, look, he said, I need a bass player. And come on, get yourself. Let's go. I said, I can't do that. So I got to give these guys at least a week. No. He said, you don't know where I am. I said, well, I know who you are, but, I got to do the right thing. He said, well, if you don't go, you're going to miss out. And Jimmy said, well, I told you how Billy was. So they got back in the bus. I did. So finally, when maybe 4, 5, 6 months later, I think when he left Richard, that's when he was discovered down in the village, and went on to his fame and his fortune. Because just like I say in 2 or 3, he knew that he was destined for fame. He had prepared himself for that.
One thing he said about an interview was like when you guys were on Jefferson Street, he said, I think if I read this right, that there were people sitting out on the front porch playing guitar, and that, is that right? And that you had to be good.
That's right. There were people in that area that liked playing guitar. There was people in various, maybe every block, there was a guitar player somewhere. But a lot of them were not as good as Jimmy, so he didn't have to worry about that. People just wanted to play guitar. And some older fellows were really nice, too. They played harps, harmonica. And mind you, at that time, Jefferson Street had about 8 clubs there, blues clubs. Then you go to South Nashville, there's about 5 or 6. East Nashville's about 4 or 5. So musicians, if you were a musician and a decent musician, at that time you could always get a job working in one of these clubs, R&B or blues club. So there wasn't no problem with that. As today, I bet there are no clubs on Jefferson Street except the Elks, and that's about it. Maybe another one, but it's so small they don't have bands. So that goes to show you what has happened in a matter of 40 years.
I'm getting the impression that, what I'm visualizing is it was almost like on a weekend would be like a carnival-like atmosphere.
It was. People were friendlier, especially now Jefferson Street on the west end was Tennessee State University. On the southern end was Fisk and Meharry, and the students all mingled and co-mingled together. You didn't need a car. Something happened. And when the interstate came through and displaced so many people, I think that left that void there. So they don't have that anymore like it was. But like you say, that was a kind of a carnival atmosphere. And so a lot of the people who have gotten their bachelor's and master's degrees and PhDs can attest to the fact that that did go on in that area.
It happened, basically it was between Fisk and TSU.
TSU.
Mm-hmm. So that was not that long of a stretch. So that's a lot of clubs, a lot of action.
Within a mile, really a mile maybe. Yeah, about a mile maybe. And there was a lot of clubs and a lot of things happening. Friday, Saturday, and Sunday night was the grand nights, And you didn't hear about a lot of crime and things happening like that because everybody was in one accord. It was about having a good time, and it was about the music. And I think also back then there were drugs, but not as prevalent as it is today. I think we drank. I think.
How in the world did you go from a chitlin circuit to Woodstock, I mean, that had to be kind of a shock, wasn't it?
It was a cultural shock for me because of, you're used to the little 200, 300, 400 people. And then from there to 200,000 or 300,000, what a transition. But it was great, and I really enjoyed that portion of my career. Then Jimmy got into some financial difficulties, and we decided to give these people an album because he didn't have the funds available to him in order to settle this lawsuit. So the Band of Gypsies came about with myself, him, and Buddy Miles. And then that band was short-lived, and then the other bass player, Noel Redding, left the group, and so that left the bass position open for myself to come in and tour with the Experience.
What was your first, when you hooked up with Jimmy, where did you meet him at? And how long did you have to rehearse before Woodstock? And what was it like to work with Mitch Mitchell at that time?
Went to New York, and we immediately went into the studio the very next day, and started working on some things that there were some patterns and some little riffs that he used to work on here years ago, and we kind of complimented each other with them. And I heard him say people would lock us up if we played this, because it was so different from what was going on at that particular time. So we had an opportunity to do some of that. For instance, Dolly Dagger, it's like, I was out on the patio at the house in Woodstock, and everyone was sleeping, so I was the first one up. I had no cornflakes, and I played Big Ben. All of a sudden, Jimmy rolls up and went, "Keep playing, don't stop, keep playing." So he runs down in his PJs, underwear really, and I said, he said, I said, "Oh, he's not going to outdo me on this." I and then I got stuck. He said, "Da-da," and then that was the introduction for Dolly Dagger. So we went on with that. So that's how we worked. You did things like that. And then prior to that, years ago, just like I say, there were little patterns, or they call them riffs, that we had done that we just enjoyed playing with the guitar up against the bass, and they sounded pretty good. That was his style that he had kind of created.
How did you, when you met Mitch, did you guys click?
Me and Mitch clicked right off from the bat, and even up to last year, we rode on the same bus. And then he came here. Prior to that, he stayed maybe a year and a half here in Nashville. We just had a good time. So me and Mitch always got along,
I thought he was a great drummer.
He was a great drummer and a great person and very intelligent.
I'm so glad that I got to tell him that, because I really truly believe that I don't think anybody could have done Manic Depression justice on drums the way he did.
How about Fire?
Well, any of it.
Yeah, right. He was good. And I think that attributed to his knowledge of jazz, the various Art Blakey and guys of that nature who he listened to also. And then he combined that with the R&B flavor, and there you got the Mitch Mitchell, man. And he was incredible on drums up to the very end.
Musical training, did you ever have any formal musical training?
Yes, I did. After I really decided to, I had formal training on the violin and trumpet, and I was kind of like a utility man in the band.
And what was your first paying job as a musician?
I don't know. At that time, I never really concerned myself with, money. It was about, it was about the art and the freedom of just playing. And if I look back, I think maybe the first big paying job was Jimmy and myself played at Burt High School prom in 1961 in Clarksville, Tennessee. And they paid us $30 a piece. That was a lot of money. That was equivalent to maybe $350. That was my first big paying job.
That was strong, because most guys I've talked to their first gig was like $5 or a piece, you know, or something like
So
that.
that was a problem now.
So what would you guys make on the chitlin circuit?
$15. $15 a piece, maybe $20. That was about it. On the chitlin circuit, that's like Manchester, Winchester, Tullahoma. A lot of those gigs I got, and then a lot that we had the various booking agents or various guys who knew these club owners that got us in and got us our money. And most of the time, they paid us. We didn't have any problems, but it was so, you know. When we were at, when we first came to Nashville, we played at the Club Del Morocco, and I think they gave us room and board and 25, let me see, what was it, 35? I don't know. Room and board, maybe 35, 40, $50 a week, something of that nature. That's all we got for the week. But that was pretty good, you know, because we didn't have to.
Well, if you look back, a Coke was a dime.
That's right.
Gas was
That's right.
25,
That's
30
right.
cents a gallon.
Loaf of bread was 20 cents.
Yeah.
Yeah, 15 cents.
Everything, you know. I know a lot of guys at Motown tell me they were making $5 a song when they first started. And then I found out the same thing was true here in Nashville and a lot of places. But everybody, the common thread is all you guys just wanted to play,
Yeah.
and we're happy to get
That's
any
right.
of it.
But they were in the studio, right?
Right.
Yeah, they were doing some other things. Yeah. Right.
What was your first time in the studio?
I think there was a guy here in town in Nashville called Charlie Dowell. And he called Jimmy and I into the studio to do some things. And it came out pretty good, but no big hits. And then later on, we worked for some other guys who put little studios together. And then Hoss Allen knew that we sounded pretty good, so he was cutting Clarence Frogman Henry. He had him under contract. Clarence Frogman Henry's from down New Orleans, and he had that New Orleans beat. And I called Jimmy in for the session. I said, well, I know this guitar player who could probably handle this. And so he came in, and so Hoss, after about 3 or 4 takes, he called me and said, can you get that guitar player to quiet down? He's a little too loud. 40 years later, he says, I wish I'd have kept those tapes. He said, I erased him off of those tapes. I said, well, that's the breaks.
Was there any surprises that you learned, especially during the Gypsy and Experience days, about the music industry that you, good or bad or whatever?
Well, during that period of time, there was some things that just didn't. When Jimmy, I don't know, I'll talk about it. Everybody knows about it. He had signed this contract with this guy, and the guy said, well, look, no big deal, just sign this for $1, and, you know, that's for you working here. But that really, Jimmy didn't do a lot of reading. That was a commitment he had made, not knowing that he was tricked. And consequently, he was being sued after he got famous for $15 million, which he didn't have. But your friends are your friends when you're up, and they're your friends when you're down. That's real friends. I hate fair weather friends. I like friends that are stable. And so we were stable. So I said, look, man, if you got a problem, I got one too. Let's see if we can resolve it. He asked some other people there, well, that ain't my problem. And then he asked Buddy Miles. Buddy Miles said, anything to help you because you've been good to me. So we wound up with a band of gypsies. And we rehearsed for that about 2 weeks. Didn't think we were going to make it because most of the songs were new, like Machine Gun and Power of Soul and things like that. But we did. We lived with those songs for 2 weeks. And when we did the Fillmore East New Year's Eve, we did 2 shows New Year's Eve and 2 shows New Year's Day. They were incredible. All 4 of those shows were incredible because we did it. And like I tell the young kids of the day, if you're playing in bands with people, guys you don't like, get out of that band because it's going to affect the music. But if you guys are in one accord, man, that music's going to be beautiful. So we were in one accord, and the band of Gypsies made a very monumental statement that has lasted even today. and I was proud of being a part of that group.
I bought the album when I was in that year, you know, and then the cassette and the 8-track and the whole bit, you know.
Yeah. And then after Jimmy made his transition, I decided to hang up my bass for a minute or two, and there's one guy who made me just get it down and go back to playing, and that was Charlie Daniels. So I joined up with Charlie. He was working on that album, Uneasy Rider. He's working that, and then I wound up working on this album called Whiskey Album with him. And we had a good ride. I enjoyed that. And then stayed with him for, I don't know, maybe a year and a half, something like that. Then formed my own group, did some other things, and had fun doing that.
Is there anything that you want to tell young musicians following?
The guy said, "How do you get to Carnegie Hall?" The guy said, "Practice, practice, practice." I guess that's all I can say. And love what you're doing, and love the people that you're doing it with, and that transcends and all that other stuff, and it shows in the music. Just be a part of what you're doing and enjoy it. And my father made a statement some years ago. He said, if you're, whatever your occupation is and you enjoy doing it, you'll never work a day in your life.